everybody. It is Thursday, 7 p.m. GMT here at twitch.tv/GNI stream. Welcome to Documentation Not Included, episode of version 2.6. Big versus small companies. My name is Josey. We have Chris here.
Hello.
And that's it.
Yeah. Up until 5 minutes ago, we were supposed to have a guest on the show. Patryk was going to come. He has been on the show before. He works in games. We were going to talk about... Well, we're still going to talk about the same subject. But he's not turned up. I think it may be a time zone thing, hopefully.
Hopefully nothing horrible has happened. He is a bit accident prone.
Yes. He did have a hole in his foot, didn't he, a few months ago? So.
Yeah, and that was not fun. Massive hello to everybody joining us here on Twitch. And... yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of pretend he's not here, but here at the same time. And then we're going to totally tease him, because that's what we do with, friends. We pick on them and tease them, right?
I wouldn't say I'm his friend.
Until he comes back.
Yes.
But yes, before we get started, we're going to have an icebreaker question. Before I get to that, I have a correction to make. So for a couple of episodes, I have mentioned that Sam's going to be joining us and that Sam is actually part of VMware. Sam's actually from Real VNC. And I actually blame one of our guests by the name of Gareth, who in our chat is asked for call, because he is obsessed with VMware. So I kept thinking VMware, and that's all I could get my head around is VMware, not Real VNC. And it might just,
To be fair, I should have picked that up as well, because I knew she was from Real VNC. I can't remember you saying VMware, to be honest. So sorry about that. I obviously don't pay attention to anything that goes on this podcast.
Apparently, neither do I. So I guess that's okay.
Indeed.
But, yes, so for our icebreaker question, I have a very, very simple one for you today. Do you feel that desserts should be a requirement at dinner?
Dinner or tea?
See, that's a phrasing thing. It's different countries and different cultures see dinner as lunchtime.
Different areas of the UK call it different things as well. So.
Okay, so let's talk about the evening meal. Do you believe that dessert should be included in the evening meal, or like a requirement for an evening meal?
I believe, personally, desserts, if you're going out for a meal, if you're eating out, should be included by default. Because they just have to be. And... it's a treat when you're eating out. But on an evening meal, I always have something sweet afterwards. It's not necessarily a dessert. In fact, it's very rarely a dessert. It's usually a chocolate bar, something like that.
Chocolate bars could be counted as desserts.
Okay, then yes. There always has to be a sweet element to it, even if it's just like honeyed nuts or something. Something sweet after my main meal.
See, I don't know. I bring this up because my sweet cravings are earlier in the day. So the idea of having like sweets as a dessert just doesn't, like, to me it just seems weird. So when I go out to a restaurant and I see the dessert menu and stuff, I'm just like,
you see, my wife doesn't have a very big appetite anywhere near what I do. Anyway, I can eat like a 7 stone heavier guy that I used to be still, and she's a lot of the time we do starters. Then we'll have our main meal, and then by the time we've finished our main meal, she's not ready. She can't manage a dessert, so, But I can eat everything, and I'll eat her food, and then eat mine, and then eat dessert, and then eat more dessert. I love food so much.
Well, go figure. So, yes, we're on now to the topic of our show.
Yes, which is big companies versus small companies. And this was chosen by Patryk because Patryk has recently moved from pretty much, I think, most of his career he's been working for small places, small independent developers, and now he's moved into a much larger, more corporate environment. And I mean, I'll let Patryk comment on that himself, and I'm sure he will over the next few months. But I have also worked in a lot of different places in my career. I've worked for one-man bands. I've worked remotely on my own for big companies. I've worked remotely for tiny companies, and I've also worked in offices with different with different size companies. So I've done the whole gamut when it comes to. What about you, Josey? What have you Who have you worked for?
Well, I've worked for big companies. I've worked for small companies. I've worked for my own company. I've worked for everything in between. It's interesting. And it's interesting to me because, like, as we can see in chat, Patryk's basically screaming out as loud as he possibly can in text, much like his mic was when we were testing it earlier, saying so many processes, overhead branches in Git, thousands of them, pull requests, code review. Hey, speaking of code review, next week we're actually going to be doing a show on code review, so that'll be a fun one. But I think it's interesting because we've had an enterprise manager, Gareth, another Gareth, not the ethical Gareth who I blamed for my misusing of words and technology types earlier in the show. But we've had someone on who's talked about what can be learned in the game industry from sort of enterprise development. And now, in a way, I think it kind of sits here in the same kind of topic. Because processes and things like that are the bread and butter of big business, because you have so many heads that have to work. If you just let everyone run around amok, there's going to be an issue. And there are a lot of small businesses that do really well, or small companies that can do really well with just leaning over and tapping someone on the shoulder going, hey, can you change that firewall rule? And you don't have to worry about it. And yet at the same time, there's good and bad in both. Let me ask you this, Chris. When you worked in big companies, did you enjoy it or did you hate it?
Right. Now, this comes back to last week when we had your lovely husband on. Your husband was talking about... forgotten the name of the show. What was the name of the show last week?
Us v them.
Yeah, so he was talking about this us v them attitude. Now, those kind of places, when you're working in a small place, that doesn't really apply, and the same applies to the policies that get put in place and the bureaucratic processes that get put in place. As you just touched upon there, I'm trying to answer your question in a kind of a roundabout way. So I don't have a problem with it these days. The company that I'm currently doing work for is a global company. They are huge in their sector. They have hundreds of thousands of employees across the world. They've got offices all over the place. They're acquiring companies left, right, and centre. They've actually got a small company mentality with a large company structure. But all the emails that I'm getting included in, which I'm not really part of the processes because of what I'm doing. I'm more of a consultant outside their standard processes, even within the team that I'm working in. So I'm in a team of what do they call them? Solution architects or systems engineers, they call them in this instance. They are all talking about their processes, and they're trying to put more processes in place and trying to put more communication between their teams in place because they have grown so quickly. I don't have a problem with it now, but I did used to have a problem with it because I didn't understand why the processes were important. Now I understand why they're important, and now I just get on with it. I just do what they need me to do and then also do my job and accept the fact that this is going to take me an extra hour today because I have to go through these processes. Security, for example, I've had to install 3 separate applications on my phone for multi-factor authentication to log into. Luckily, they have a single sign-on system, but there's 2 separate single sign-on systems for different parts of the organization that I actually need access to. One is the more public, the less secure side, but it still needs all these multi-factors. And then there's the private side, which is things like source code, internal documentation, real company secrets that they really don't want anybody to have on their own computer because they've got a lot of remote workers and, again, a lot of people that work across the world. So as a long answer, that is my long answer. But as a short answer, no, I don't have a problem now. I used to have a problem when I was younger and I didn't quite understand why, and it was just getting in the way of me doing a good job, you know?
Well, see, I come from 2 sides of the coin for that particular question. I have a love-hate relationship with that concept. I have seen instances. Maybe it goes back even further to something that Hamid said at the very start of our show with him. We were talking about have idea question mark and profit, and he said, "I hate people." You know, I'm the kind of individual who loves people. I hate work people. There's a sort of a different kind of concept to it. I have the processes and the people that I've seen. The politics just annoy the crap out of me.
That's
but I
different.
have seen processes put into place with no purpose that all it did was add time, not efficiency.
So,
see, to me, a process should be in place for 3 purposes. 1, documentation, because you should document everything. 2, it should be in place so that everyone follows the same rules and regulations. And 3, it should increase efficiency in the future. It just should make a process that kind of a thing. When you start throwing things down, like, for example, I have seen a process come down the pipeline where an entire managed service team or an entire support team, an entire dev team had to log exactly what they were working on every 15 minutes.
Can I relay a real life story that happened to me related exactly to that? My very, very first job, I was the only IT guy there. While I was there, I was 16 to 18 when I was working in this place. I ran the entire IT department as it grew. So I got new developers on, I got graphic designers on, I got people to deal with hardware, and then I also somehow inherited a telesales operation as well. God knows why I even got involved in that, because it was way out of the remit. But as that occurred, we actually got a general manager on, because I said to my bosses, I'm 18. I don't know what I'm doing. I need some help to run this business, because you guys are out selling constantly. This goes back to the salesperson, them versus us thing. These people selling constantly, giving us loads of work, and me not having the resource or the time to do everything that you think I can do, because I was a confident kid even then. I didn't know everything. I was at the bottom of this.
Or cocky.
I was at the bottom of, the top of Mount Stupid at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
I said I could do everything, and I did try to do everything and got well too stressed and learned from it. But the point is that I had when we got this general manager in, the company was still only about 5 technical staff, and then the telesales team was a transient team of 15. I mean, every day there'd be someone leave and someone come back. It was an awful environment in particular. But there was 5 of us that were doing the day-to-day processing. We had to log every 10 minutes what we were doing, and there was no reason for this whatsoever, apart from she'd done a course, and she thought that this was the way to run a company in general. Every 10 minutes, and then every hour we had to have 10 minutes white space as well. And white space was get up, get away from your computer and do something, whether it's printing some documents out and being away from your screen. It was a health and safety thing. Again, health and safety gone absolutely crazy in this instance. And it was pointless at that level. Even now, it's pointless. I don't understand that.
Well, it's interesting. Patryk in our chat points out, WTF, how company ran by control freak survived. It basically comes down to the sort of micromanagement thing. There is a fascinating thing. Are you familiar with TopTall?
I've heard the term. I'm not sure why.
TopTall is a developer. They sort of are like a placement agency, but for like the top 1% of developers.
Oh, yes, I have,
kind of a thing. And they have a tracking tool, a time tracker tool, which allows you to track what projects you're working on and things like that. Because of the fact that a lot of the places or the people that they place can sometimes be remote workers, they have a very fascinating addition to their time tracker, and it's known as the screenshot taker.
Or what? I don't like where this is going.
So what it does is it can be set up to, while you're recording time on a particular project, it'll take a screenshot at a certain period of time of your screen to show what you're working on. Now, I didn't notice that it keep a documentation on how many screenshots. Like it keeps a constant recurrence of the screenshots. I think that's kind of horrible for a server. So I think it's just the latest screenshot that is grabbed, or the latest one every 15 minutes or so, or something else like that. But I thought it was rather interesting because, when you're dealing with a lot of workers and a lot of random locations, and you're a big company, you want to make certain that you're paying for what you're worth. But what that allowed the admins to do is they could log in at any time and see what the latest screenshot was for your hours, etc. And if you have your timing just right, you can totally scope that stuff. Just be like, you remember the old school, you were playing a game and then you press a button because it said escape, or like the old Flash games. You press the button, it looks like an Excel spreadsheet and all that other stuff. I could just imagine someone totally abusing that.
Yes, you can. The thing is, in that instance, right? I'm a remote worker. I currently, I'm in a position where I've been given a Word document with all the requirements on that is going to cover the next 6 months worth of work. Very kind of top level requirements. Everything's very speculative. It's as woolly as it's been for me for a long time. Most of the time I agree up front what I'm going to do, what I'm going to deliver, and they don't really care how I do it, when I do it. You know,
that is the luxury of what we do, at least what you and I do.
I mean, I'm very lucky in that most of my clients I've built, current clients I've built trust with. Previous clients, not so much, because I worked in offices more than anything, and it was, again, just doesn't work for me personally. But now, these days, I work remotely, I deliver everything that they want me to deliver, and usually a little bit more. Current clients going to be quite difficult because they're so woolly, the requirements, but the very nature of the work that I'm doing is speculative. It's to potentially get financing for the next funding round for the next financial year. So what I'm putting together are essentially technical feasibility studies to say, this is what I've done, this is how I've done the analysis, these are the business benefits. You know, it's a bit like a precursor to a business case. But I'm also doing prototyping as well. So I'm playing around with technologies and I'm looking at alternatives and I'm playing around with all these different platforms to figure out. So it's difficult for me to actually, as a developer, I would normally say that task is going to take me 3 days. Give or take a day or two. That task's going to take me 2 weeks. But this I can't do that with.
Well, yeah, and also hello, Professor Apple, who happens to be socially pressured into being here by Patryk. And Patryk says, deciding whether a worker is performing or not should be up to the direct manager. I think there's actually a topic in that, because I have seen some direct managers who don't know their ass from their elbow. And then I have seen some direct managers who are hot shit, like point blank. I have to get some cursing in here. Patryk's back. And then also continues to say, this sort of lack of trust makes for so toxic environment.
Toxic.
Topic. A topical environment. But yes, a toxic environment. And I think, going back to what you were saying, Chris, you know, when you are brought in, like for you and I, when we're brought in with the intent we're deliverables, and we're brought in for our expertise in those deliverables, or our expertise in getting those deliverables done. And when we come in, we can work through them, we do them, and in both our cases, we bill by the hour. So we bill by the hour for the time and the things that we're putting into, etc. The idea, and this is sort of for us, it's kind of small business, because that's how our companies work. I was thinking to myself, let's say I bring somebody into my company. Let's say I bring someone in, because it's something you and I were talking about before. And I'm like, how would I verify that they are doing what I've asked them to do? How would I verify that they get their deliverables to me and all the other things that go with that? And it dawned on me, I have to have them kind of do what I do for my clients. I have to build the trust relationship, and I have to have very clear-cut deliverables, and the communication has to be present, and they have to be able to, if they need help, say, yo, I just need a little bit of help here on this topic, or if they have another idea, be able to bring that up. But then I started thinking, but the moment you bring someone else into our company, which is small, and it gets bigger, I have to start looking at other things. For example, BYOD policies. You know, bring your own device to work policies. There has to be regulations for that, and they have to be clear cut as part of GDPR, actually. So they have to be very clear. They have to be explained. There has to be training. There has to be onboarding sessions. And again, we're back to the concept of processes.
Right. There doesn't have to be all of that stuff as a small company. There are some legal requirements. For example, in the UK now, I employ officially employ my wife as my PA. She does all of my administrative work. She does all my invoicing and everything else. And I have to give her the option, because of some legislation that passed, I think, last year or the year before, of having a pension for the company, even though she works part-time for me and she's not a full-time employee. So I have to do that by law. If she's past a certain threshold, I have to provide her, even at my size, a pension. I don't have to do that because she's self-employed, but obviously it's in my interests other than that to do that as well. But I still have to send her a letter that says, do you want to be included in the company pension scheme, which, by the way, doesn't exist. You know, you would be the only person. I've got my own pension, but it's different for me because I'm a special person.
I know exactly what you're on about. I'm in the same boat when it comes to the whole pension side of things. But
that's the thing, as a small company, you don't need to have these onboarding processes. It's a courtesy as a small company. You know, you do have to have some kind of process in place for reportability or accountability, but there's also... At our size, it probably makes more sense for us to subcontract and outsource.
It honestly does. If I were to bring someone into the company, it would be by subcontracting. Like, that's just the way it would work. Which then
the way that would work is, yes, you give them a set of deliverables, you agree a date with them, and then they estimate based on the deliverables, and you agree a date between you. And that's how I work with most of my clients. And that's preferable to me, and it's madness working any other way. If I have to get involved in a process with one of my clients, that puts me in a sketchy position legally.
Yeah.
But also, I hate it. I don't need to be involved in that. Most of the time, I'm very lucky that I'm producing documents with my own company's letterhead at the moment, and I'm passing it off to somebody in a team within that company, and they're going to take content out of that document and put it in an internal document, probably. I don't even mind putting their letterhead on my document if that's going to save them some time, but it's still a deliverable. I've still agreed an output from what they've asked me to do. It's just estimating. It's very difficult right now.
Yep. And going back to poor Patryk, who is completely voiceless and cameraless today, the disembodied Patryk, he says, if manager sucks, then the issue is their manager. It's managers all the way, y'all. Oh, man, I can't wait to have him back on the show. He says, oh, God, so much onboarding, too. That's what amazed me in bigger company, the amount of onboarding and stuff. One thing I will say, all that overhead of processes and onboarding really helps in bringing in new people. The project I'm working on has been in development for some while, yet can't say, and integration into it is not as painful as I worried it could be. So there are benefits. And, I have to say that is the honest to goodness reason why I think onboarding is so important, period. I've done a slight thing recently within my company. I've started handling all of the documentation and everything else that I do slightly different, which has actually increased the amount of time it takes me to perform certain things, but it's actually made it more efficient. Like, I've streamlined my pipeline is basically the best way to put it. And part of that was reworking my onboarding process for clients.
Okay, well, that's a different onboarding for clients.
But my point is, though, that whole concept of onboarding was actually spurred on by the concept of something that we had in one of our shows. Or I should say streamlining it was about, we were talking about something with documentation in one of our shows at some point in time in our entire existence. And my brain just went, haha. And then I learned a lot of that sort of processing through the big business side of things.
You just have to, as a small company, be careful that you don't go too far with it, and make sure that, as we've already said, that it's very, there's a specific reason and there's a specific benefit to whatever policy that you're implementing. I have my own internal policies, even with my wife. There are certain things that I like her to do in a certain way. She's my employee. I can tell her what to do legally.
Yes.
I do have to, because she doesn't do the same tasks every day, she forgets what she's doing a lot of the time and I have to repeat myself, but it's still a process that has to be followed. There's a lot of the things she does, because it's accounting and that kind of stuff, it's a legal process as well. My accountants expect things in a certain way, but she manages, or she does that process. I just kind of remind her every now and again what to do. Now, onboarding, I just want to just briefly cover recent onboarding. I've had 2 different clients, very different clients, both massive companies, but one was a tiny department within a company that didn't have any kind of onboarding process. They essentially paid for me to go up and see them. They got me in the office for 4 days, and we went through requirements, very much driven by myself, very much me asking questions, figuring out exactly what they wanted. And I've got to a point now in my career where I know what I need to ask to get to the pertinent and important pieces of work. And I know how to restrict my scope so I can get deliverables to a client in the way that they need them to be delivered. And the same is applied to this bigger client as well. Because the one person that I'm interacting with on a by daily basis is extremely busy and involved in tons and tons of processes, I'm essentially a resource for him. I'm essentially helping him out for some work that he's going to be doing in the future. But I'm at a technical level. Now, it took me about a week to figure out exactly what he wanted from me, because I'm not being able to interact with him every day. I was in the office for a week as well. And it's a case of figuring out how to work with an individual and figuring out what their value is and what their focus is. Because a lot of the time you don't get, and this applies on every level, technical levels, business levels, support levels, business-to-business relationships with new clients. It's totally different depending on their experiences. And this one guy is very business-focused, very cost-focused, very, very interested in what can be done to make an existing problem easier to manage, let's say. I can't go into much more detail than that, but essentially he's different from a previous client who they had a piece of software that they needed writing and needed an expert to do that. So I went in, asked all the relevant requirement gathering questions, and then compiled the document, agreed the document loosely. I'm not someone who says, right, this is all you're going to get. I know that requirement. So there's always scope.
There's always something written inside, at least with my my contracts, that says if scope in any way needs to be modified, we can revisit. It's not like you're stuck with what you got.
There
has to be a starting point.
There's also the benefit that we have is that it's an hourly billable process. If you agree fixed price work, that's very different. There is a certain amount of scope creep. It's the same with maintenance contracts. We were actually discussing this the other day about ongoing maintenance. If you agree to a support contract and say, this is level 1 support incident, the website's down, it's a 24-hour website, everybody's using it all the time, it's global, it's really important when it goes down. You're working with a big company or a particular section of a big company that's you're managing. Even though it's a tiny little application, it's still pertinent that it's always there. Can you, as an individual, support that? That means you can't go on holiday. It means that you need somebody to support you when you're ill. It means all of that kind of stuff. Now, that's everything that you need to consider when you write a contract or you put. Yep. We're getting into very contract-driven stuff, and I really wish we had Patryk here so he could level us out. I'm going to
shift us ever so slightly off to the side, and I'm going to look at a particular big business thing, which I think is kind of it goes back to something you were saying earlier. And Patryk, feel free to chime in and stuff like that, but you can't blame us. It's not our fault. You really can't. This is all your fault, Patryk.
He's telling us off for going at the contract stuff. But it's not just contract or business-to-business stuff or self-employment. It kind of applies at every level, but my experience is very much business-driven these days. It's very much, I am a business. I'm working with clients,
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to going back to the big business side of things, when you do an onboarding process, the onboarding process isn't just fill out all the forms so we know where to send your paycheck. You have to understand the company policies. You need to know what all of the different rules and regulations are within that particular company, because there can be very specific things for things like email usage or internet usage or file usage or anything. Like everyone can have their own types of policies and you've got to follow that, but it's also about learning the systems. When you come in, it's about learning where you're at, being aware of what tools are being used, why they're being used, how you would then use them to perform your job. And there is nothing more frustrating, and I know my husband would agree with this because he's gone through something like this before, than coming into a company, going through, and this is big companies we're talking here, going through the onboarding process and having to wait a week for the right credentials or the right tools or the right anything. It's almost like in your case, Chris, and like in my case as well, when we come in, That whole onboarding process we can get paid for, and we can't continue on to deliverables until we have done at least some type of onboarding process. However, when you work in a big business, it's automatically kind of like, well, you get a paycheck from us. We're going to waste your time doing the things we need to do, and then wonder why you haven't been working. And you're just sitting there going, I would love to work, but I don't have an SSH key in the repository. I would love to work, but you haven't given me access to this particular system.
So
I would like, it's so
I tend to
interesting
find
to me.
the bigger companies accept that. The line managers and the people that are signing your timesheets accept that.
Not always, though.
I was very lucky in this one that it took me 2 days, absolute maximum, to complete all of the online training courses, which but you have to do them. Again, I've accepted. It's annoying that I have to go through the same health and safety nonsense that's all self-explanatory and common sense. I have to go through the same kind of how to represent the company stuff, which again doesn't really apply to me, but I still speak to their vendors and I sometimes speak to their customers. And it's important that from my perspective, it's important that I make sure I am introduced as an outside consultant, but at the same time, I am representing them and I am working with their data and with their systems, and it's still very important that I am responsible with those systems. I got given a laptop the same day. In fact, everybody that was around me, they couldn't believe how quickly I got onboarded, because when I came, the first thing, I sat down with the manager, he onboarded me, he went through the checklist, which was 3 A4 sides full of questions and things he had to go through. I said, this is a huge company with but a lot of the things, again, he knew, because of the interview that we'd had, he knew how I worked, we understood each other. There were some things that he knew I didn't need to worry about, and there was some things that he was like, you have to, and I said, yeah, I've already done that, I've done that. So I spent the first day going through all these training courses, signing all the additional documentation on top of the contracts that I had to do. All this stuff I hate normally I used to make me look a bit like an employee. But the way that I look at it is my working practices aren't employee based at all. I just have to do this as part of getting access to their systems, and they won't give it to me otherwise. So I can't do the job. I can't earn any money as a business, so commercially it's in my interest to sign everything and get everything. They couldn't believe that the IT guy, there was one IT guy that serviced a building of 500 people, weird, but he came upstairs with his phone, took a photo of me, and I had a badge within the day to get into the building, which everyone was surrounding me was like, that took me 3 days to get that.
They know time is money with us, my friend.
Well, maybe that's it. But I think they literally just changed the process so so he could do it from his phone. He just got a new app.
So maybe there's also, that's the thing. We don't always know when we come in what's happening or what's changing inside. Exactly. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
So the onboarding for me was really quick and really easy, because I cooperated, I think, as well, and because I was very clear on what I needed to get the job done that they want me to do.
Patryk adds another thing, though maybe it's a Scopely specific thing. It feels like first days are a lot more chill than in small projects. Here, they actually can afford to take the time, ease you in, help you make social connections with coworkers, really huge push to minimize socialization or whatever it was called. Whereas small companies, you got to hit the ground sprinting, read docs after hours because you only got so much time, money, so rush. There are always other contracts. Why? Yeah, my onboarding was less hardcore than yours, Chris, and Scopely feels like between this Turbo Corp you're talking about and small companies like Elysian Shadows or freelancing, no siloization.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing, is that I am siloed in what I'm doing at the moment.
I love being siloed, but I hate it. I hate it at the same time because I'm going to save that for my RTFM because something happened this week, and because of the fact that I'm siloed to the place that I'm at, I had something happen that made me want to rip my hair out and basically stab a pencil into a fruit or something, because I couldn't even do that. Actually, I feel very bad for the fruit. I'm not a very violent person, but it made me angry, really angry. But anyway, when it comes to the onboarding process, because we could stay focused on that forever, I think we should just put that aside for a second and talk about that kind of cultural shock that can happen from a big company to a small company, because there is a culture shock. There is a drastic culture shock. at least that I have seen from what I have experienced. I worked in a big company where you knew the people who were in your office. You knew the people who you did work for, at least in my particular case. I knew it was expected of me. And it was, kind of, it was the slightly us v them, because it was just sort of one of those, why is there a banana in the printer? Because the printer was hungry. Why are you feeding a banana to the printer is now broken? You are 60 years old. You don't put fruit. That incident still blows my brains out. But okay. that was such a shock to me. Everything was laid back. It was just, you knew what had to be done, and people didn't mind stopping occasionally and having a quick chat over a cup of coffee. It wasn't that big of a deal. I moved into a small company, and when I was in that small company, everybody was right there in your face. And it really felt more, for lack of a better term, tense.
Frantic.
Yeah, it felt more tense and a bit more frantic. And it could be because they were at a place, at least in my personal opinion, whether or not it's true, because I walked out of that BS. But the company itself may have been at that place, that dangerous place where they needed to expand, but they hadn't done it yet.
So
that might have been why there was that.
There's quite. I do networking as well, and there's quite a few business people there that didn't expand their businesses early enough, and they are first to admit it. And they whenever, like, we do this add-on every morning, every Wednesday, and it's things like, I mean, this week it was what's the biggest mistake you've made in your career, or what, think add-ons like that. Well, and that one in particular, a lot of people usually say not hiring people fast enough.
Yeah.
Because I'm a control freak. Because not necessarily control freak, because I don't want to let go of my baby. I don't want to. I don't see the value in it. I don't feel like people can do it as good as me, I know I've been thinking recently about expanding my own business, because I've got 4 clients all at once that want a piece of me. But the problem I have, this isn't a control thing. They want me, specifically want me.
That's the thing I'm running into, because when people recommend my company, they don't recommend my company. They recommend me. It's just so happens that I am my company, but I'm exactly in the exact same place. Whereas if I turn to a larger company, I kind of know there's going to be more people, so I kind of expect things. I don't mind if I'm talking to Anne one day and Joe the next day, as long as they've got the notes of whatever it is that I'm discussing with them for whatever purpose it needs to be done. It's not that big of a deal to me. But I get where you're coming from entirely, Chris. I really, really do.
I feel like when it comes to smaller companies, for me, I'm again lucky these days that I have a scope and I know what I need to deliver. And I say to them, and if they say this needs delivering in 3 weeks and it's a 3-month job, it doesn't matter how big they are. It doesn't matter if they're a charity. It doesn't matter if they're a huge corporation. I am one man with with my own hours, and I do not work more than 7.5 to 8 hours a day. If there was one client that had a very hard deadline and it was impossible for us to hit it without me doing extra hours, but they paid me for those extra hours.
Right.
And I mean, that particular contract, I didn't get any thanks whatsoever, but I delivered it and I nailed it, and I was very, very proud of doing that. But I was also rolling in it because of the amount of extra time I did. But I also nearly lost my sanity through it as well. It's not something I would ever recommend.
Yeah, lesson learned.
I might. There's a potential of doing that again if I'm in the same situation. If I need to do it and I've agreed to it and I understand that that's the case at the beginning of the contract, then, or the beginning of the project, then yes, I'll do it. But that's another topic, and we've talked about that before. We have talked about that before in a previous show, in fact. But the small company mentality, a lot of the time, is down to resource. Simple as that. It's we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough, we've got investors to appease, we've got clients that want everything under the sun, we've got salespeople that are selling clients, overselling to clients, and it's organised chaos a lot of the time.
Yes, it absolutely is.
But that isn't the employee's fault. And this comes back down to another episode we've done, which I can't remember the title of that one either, but where you cannot... Indispensable developer, that was it. You cannot be that indispensable person. You are important in your own life. You know, you have your own amount of time that you dedicate to work, and then the rest of your time should be relaxing, should be doing things you want to do, should be spending with your family. Even if it's coding, it doesn't matter, as long as it's not working for your employer constantly, because you are not your employer's business. You are contributing to it, and yes, you may have a profit share, which, by the way, I'll just let you know now, it's worth nothing, and it never will be worth anything unless you're extremely lucky and you're in a very small minority there. Everybody promises somebody something, and it very rarely comes to fruition, you know? That's a pessimistic view from an optimistic person, but it's the truth, and I've experienced it a number of times.
Oh, that's a whole topic unto itself, and that's something we'll save for another episode, because there are thoughts on that, some big thoughts. But we are getting close to the end. We should do an RTFM.
We should.
Get that out of the way. Do you have one today, Chris? And for you, Patryk, because you can't be here, but do you have an RTFM that you want to complain about as well?
So, big versus small companies. My
doesn't
RTFM,
even have to be with.
No,
well,
I try and relate it to what we're talking about. I'm having a great time at the moment in my life. I mean, an RTFM for me is, my God, why can someone help me change my business model so I can accommodate all of my clients at once? And I don't even. It's not even that. It's not even that I don't trust anybody else with the work, and I can't employ somebody because I don't have the time or the resources, because I could do that. It's that if a lot of the time I'm not allowed to subcontract, I'm not allowed to I am allowed to substitute, but in reality, substitution doesn't really happen in my industry. It's very rare. I am providing a personal service as a consultant, and they interview me, they hire me, they take me on for a project. I need to figure that out. That's my RTFM is, I don't even know what to do. It's for the first time in my life, I don't know how to handle a situation. Apart from, I've just spoken to one client and said, can I drop down to 3 days a week? And then and one of my other clients, I've said, I'll do 2 days a week for you. And luckily, I think I'm getting somewhere with that. But that's not good enough. You know, I've got another 2 clients that might need 5 days a week from me.
Patryk says, wow. Okay. So, to quote the lovely Patryk, who is a cursing fiend, yeah, we're back to explicit episodes, aren't we?
Yes.
Fucking life without internet, man. Fucking sucks. It's horrible. It's like living with half a brain, mute, deaf, and blind. My God, how could we function before this wondrous hive mind end rant?
This. He's just said exactly what I'm in the process. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I'm in the process of putting together a novel. I'm trying to write a novel based on a computer game that I was designing a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, and a lot of that is focused on this kind of phenomenon of the internet being an extension of the human mind, and it's not, and it is. We are a hive mind. The youth of today, like Patryk, he can't deal without having the internet there in front of him. Whenever something happens on television or something happens around us and we don't know the answer, we look it up, and it's great while we look it up, but then we forget, and we have to look it up again the next time. And I'm telling you, we're going to have implants within 10, 15 years. We'll have implants that connect us directly to the internet and look things up as we...
Toltepe, gosh, there's no internet equals read a book.
That's what I'm doing at the moment. I got back into reading because I'm trying to get myself off the internet as much as I'm on it.
We'll have to have a conversation about this sometime, because Patryk continues to says, look, I could look at it as addiction, but frankly, it's more of a power multiplication. You can do so much more with the internet. That's what he did, is he went through 20 books. And Toltepe says, disconnecting is very relaxing. And you know what? I'm right there with him.
Absolutely.
Now, I live on the interwebs because of what I do, and part of my hosting and some of the stuff. I basically eat, sleep, breathe, whether I'm doing community management or I'm doing PR or I'm doing publicity or whatever it is I happen to be doing. I am interneting. And I have found myself in a very dangerous place. So I kind of, in a way, have 2 RTFMs for today based on this. Okay. So first off, my big problem is I hate Facebook with a passion. I don't believe in them at all. I find the corporate culture, the way that they present themselves, to be malicious extremely. And I've recently found out that I think it was a couple million passwords are stored in plain text, and they've been searched. Yeah, it's basically, think of it as every user of Facebook, whoever has a password, their password is available in plain text to employees in Facebook, and those employees have openly searched frequently to get these things. So I don't want anything to do with Facebook.
They haven't necessarily searched for passwords. They've searched for records that have contained passwords as a part of their job.
Well, the thing is, as someone who is security, that kind of information to me simply equates to, yeah, I highly doubt it hasn't been used maliciously. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. So to me, the idea of doing anything on Facebook pisses me off. And yet I know for marketing for some of my clients, it's a requirement, and I am in a really, 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 really bad place because of it, and I'm having to put thinking caps into that. But that's a basic thing based on what you were saying. My real RTFM kind of deals with silos, with big company and small company. I implore anybody who works with people who are freelancers, if you know for a fact that any of the internal work that you are choosing to do will have an impact on anything that your freelancer works on, please fucking tell us that you're going to be doing work. I had a client who their site just kind of went offline. And I'm like, what? Last week I had it because of GoDaddy. This week it's for a different purpose. And it took me a little bit to figure out what the hell was going on. And the reason why is because they decided to move their DNS from their DNS servers to Cloudflare. And Cloudflare requires certain types of settings to be done with SSL environments and things like that. And they hadn't done it. So it was actually causing issues. And they didn't tell me. I only found out about it when the site went down.
Did the people who did the work know you exist, though?
Yes.
And do they know that you were responsible?
Very much so.
Right, okay.
Very much
so. Because that's often a problem with me. I've, for example, found out some of the work that I've been projected to do, I've got on my list to do, is a change request has just been put in. Again, this is another policy that with big companies, change requests have to get filled in by the people who are going to do the work, signed off by various steps of management, and then actually brought back. Anyway, so change request has been put in to directly do the work that I have been assigned to do, and that is an internal communication problem. However, as soon as I found out, I spoke to the relevant people. I spoke to the people who put the change request in. I asked them to keep me up to date with where they are. I didn't say, please don't do this work. I said, let me know where you're up to. So I now know the status of it, and the people that I'm reporting to have got involved as well. So it's a communication thing a lot of the time, but unfortunately not the same. It very much is a
communication thing. In this particular case, I just wonder if this person just doesn't like me. Because this is not the first time they've done something in the couple of years that I've been working in this particular contract where they've done something and I've only found out about it because my monitoring system has gone off. Okay. It's almost like they don't, it's like, it's really weird. I don't understand it. I don't get it. All I know is I now have another thing in place in my monitoring because of this learned lesson experience so that I can be a lot more annoying.
Vigilant is the right word, Josey. Oh, we've just lost Josey. So, yes, I'm hoping Josey will come back in a minute, but I believe that is the end of the show. And people in chat are also talking about Josey disappearing. So yes, I believe that is the end of the show. Thank you very much for everybody for watching, and Josey is now back. Oh,
let's just have all of the technical difficulties, all that we possibly.
I was just starting to close the show because we've pretty much got to the end of the RTFM anyway. We are probably a little bit early because we had a bit of a break as well today.
That's true. But we do have some things to talk about before we close out the show.
Yes.
So, what did you say?
I literally was just about to close the show with the script, so I was going to read your bit first, but I wasn't sure if you're going to come back, so I'll let you do that.
I will read it. So I'm back. So yes, so we are at the end of our show. And I want to thank everyone in chat, including Patryk, who should be here. He'll be here next week. He better be. And a massive thank you to Aussie who showed up, and also to the Professor Apple and to Tepe and Invina and all of you crazy, awesome people. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Yes, and you can visit our website on www.dnistream.live. You can find links to our Discord, Twitter, YouTube channels.
Subscribe.
Yes,
we need 100 subscribers in order for us to get a name.
Might even drop YouTube because the podcast is doing pretty well. To be fair, we're getting some good downloads on Fireside, and hopefully.
Well, we get people watching it on YouTube as well, because we don't store the video part anywhere else. So
No.
I say whether or not it's just keep it just for now. But I would like to have it to be youtube.com/TNI stream.
It would be nice, yes. So if you are listening and you haven't already liked our
then
YouTube,
ignore us.
Yeah, just ignore us afterwards. But please like our page or subscribe or whatever it is on YouTube.
It's subscribe.
It is, yes. You can use our website to contact us, to get hold of us for any reason whatsoever. If you want to be a guest on the show, you want a particular subject talked about, or you've got some funny developer stories you want reading out, as long as they are appropriate. But then again, almost anything's appropriate for this podcast.
And speaking of the website, if you are interested in getting involved in coding with us or anything else like that, you can find our website code at github.com/documentation not included. Create tickets if you have an idea for things you actually want to see, or if you find a bug, or if you think something could be done better. Bring us issues in our GitHub so that we can go forth and make Chris excited. Because he gets excited bug fixing right now when it comes to our website. We need to grab him while he's in this mood until he gets bored.
We say that, but I've got the DNI website and another website that I'm doing in my spare time, plus the work I'm doing, plus another 2-3 clients.
That's enough. No more.
Yeah, it's all adding up, but I'm still getting time to do bits and bobs here and there. But,
yeah.
So yes. I'll close the show this week, Josey.
Okay. Make sure you read that big bold thing.
Yes, I will. So yes, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We hope to see you next week on Twitch /DNI stream, Thursday at 7 p.m. Note that the clocks are going forward. Spring forward.
That was one hell of a question.
Yeah, spring forward, fall back. That's how we remember it in this house. And we're joined from Sam from Real VNC, not VMware, to discuss code reviews. Now, code reviews are something that it exists in the open source world. It also exists in the corporate and the enterprise world, but doesn't really for the smaller companies, for the bedroom coders and that kind of thing. It doesn't really exist. So I'm quite interested to talk about that. I've obviously been involved in that, so I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. So it's goodbye from me, and goodbye from Josey.
Bye-bye!
And goodbye from Patryk. I was going to do an impression of him, but I can't.
I was thinking about it, but I'm like, I don't think I could get even close to his accent.
Indeed. So sorry about the mess of a show. Our sponsors, we're going to have to drop them again this week.
Oh, gosh darn it. Us and our sponsors. Aren't they okay? Wait. Maybe someday we'll have a sponsor.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually try and get some at some point, but we have too much fun on this show to be bothered. Anyway, so goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.